Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule.
Each motion can be transformed into an achievement of the spirit, commitment to the evolution of consciousness, and the onrushing whirlwind of events will lead to a new turn of the cosmic spiral. Please continue watching for the messages from the Venerated Master Morya, as recorded by his disciples Nicholas and Helena Roerich, vegetarians.
If you ever visit charming Moldova and its gorgeous natural landscapes, you would also appreciate hearing the heartwarming Vă doresc o zi plăcută from the locals, which means have a nice day in Romanian, the official language of the country. Beautiful viewers, I am Evelina. The caring people of Moldova cherish you and your virtuous way of life, as it is how you change the world for the better. May the heavens always keep you safe. Welcome to Yoga, the supreme bridge to cosmic attainment, from Agni Yoga by Nicholas and Helena Roerich, vegetarians, part 1 of 2 on Words of Wisdom. The esteemed mystical and philosophical writers Nicholas and Helena Roerich are two of the most influential spiritual thought leaders from Russia, recognized for founding the doctrine of Agni Yoga, also known as living ethics, believed to be a synthesis of all yogas, spiritual disciplines. Agni Yoga focuses on the daily practice of love, beauty, and noble action. Nicholas Roerich was also a highly esteemed artist whose illuminating paintings, charged with the energy of his mystical experiences, drew many pilgrims from around the world. His wife, Helena Roerich, was the incentive for his interest in Eastern spirituality and theosophy. She is depicted in his painting titled She Who Leads. Traveling extensively throughout Asia to deepen their spiritual studies, the Roerichs eventually met their master in Darjeeling, India. The ascended Venerated Master Morya, also known as El Morya, is a master of the Great White Brotherhood, an order of ascended masters and their incarnated disciples, one of whom was Helena Blavatsky. In fact, Master Morya inspired the founding of the Theosophical Society, and to the Roerichs he was the inspiration behind all of their noble ideals for the world. Morya revealed messages of higher wisdom to Nicholas and Helena Roerich, which they recorded on paper and later gathered into a series of texts. Today we will read a selection from Agni Yoga from 1929, a book containing some of the remarkably uplifting teachings of Master Morya, put into text by his disciples Helena and Nicholas Roerich. The excerpt serves as a pure spiritual inspiration for our modern and future generations, with an aim and emphasis on following the course of conscious evolution. Agni Yoga, 1929. The blessed Mahatma Morya, who gave the books The Call, Illumination, and Community, has given much counsel and the science of Agni Yoga. These practical indications were gathered by us for the use of those who seek knowledge. Sanskrit and Senza, ancient languages, lend a special flavor to the exposition and do not always find their equivalent in other languages. Nevertheless, the meaning of the expressions is preserved exactly, and those who take part in contemporary life will read attentively this wise teaching, which emanates from the experience of centuries. Preface. Yoga, that supreme bridge to cosmic attainment, has existed through all ages. Each teaching comprises its own yoga, applicable to that step of evolution. The yogas do not contradict each other. As the branches of one tree, they spread their shade and refresh the traveler, exhausted from heat. His strength regained, the traveler continues on his way. He took naught that was not his, nor did he divert his striving. He embraced the manifested benevolence of space. He liberated the preordained forces. He mastered his single belonging. Do not reject the forces of yoga, but like light, carry them into the twilight of labor, unrealized. For the future, we arise out of sleep. For the future, we renew our garments. For the future, we sustain ourselves. For the future, we strive in our thought. For the future, we gather strength. First, we shall apply the counsels of life. Then we shall pronounce the name of the yoga of the time approaching. We shall hear the advancing footsteps of the element of fire, but we shall already be prepared to master the undulations of the flame. Therefore, we hail the yoga of the past, the Raja Yoga, and we affirm that of the future, the Agni Yoga. They will ask, can the time of Maitreya, future Buddha, create a new era? Answer, if the Crusades brought a new age, then truly the era of Maitreya is 1,000-fold more significant. In such consciousness should one proceed. People do not realize the meaning of God or Bodhisattva. As though blind, they ask, what is light? But people even lack words to describe its properties, though daily they perceive light. So wary are people of the unusual that they are confused about the boundaries of light and darkness. It is simpler for them to conceive of God inhabiting a palace upon the largest star. Otherwise their God would remain dwellingless. Their manifest lack of co-measurement impels them to demean what exists. Often you wonder why I do not reply to a question. You must know that the arrows of thought often graze the subject of the answer. Imagine a traveler who is crossing an abyss upon a rope. Would it be wise to begin calling him? The call may disturb his balance. Therefore, one should pronounce names less often, reserving them for urgent need. The ability to use individual names is necessary, but uttering them should be like the blow of a hammer in space. Regarding simpler words for simple people, one should remember that simple people need smaller doses of medicine. There is the identical law, as above, so below. Therefore, simple people are the best disseminators. One can visit different planets in one's mental body. Thus is indicated that future step when consciousness will not be confined to the one planet. As we now cross from one part of the world to another, the same principle will be applied in interplanetary crossings. The teacher bids you rejoice at each attainment of the spirit. The way to and from other planets is no more difficult than is the passage between the physical and astral bodies, no more complicated than understanding the process of thought and striving to the stars. Only in striving for the interplanetary can we be assured of the evolution of humanity. The manifestation of new rays prompts beautiful additions to our plans. The densification of the astral body is inconsequential in itself when compared with the conscious work of the mental body. For one's tasks on this planet, the mental body need not be released from its shielded condition, but this highest body is needed for interplanetary activity. The affirmation of new rays will permit one to retain consciousness in diverse spheres. Formerly, only certain strata of the atmosphere permitted the retention of consciousness, but interceptions by gaseous currents were still possible. However, the new rays can penetrate these interceptions, creating open channels and thus expanding the conscious activity. Work on the utilization of these rays is underway at our community. Usually they have no significant effect on the brain, but sometimes they can be quite dangerous. One can point out why the teachers of knowledge experienced such suffering on departing Earth. Of course, this suffering was conscious and voluntarily chosen. Just as the host fills the guest's cup to the brim, so does the teacher desire to impress this last sign of his teaching. The poisoning of Buddha spared him from deification. The suffering and resurrection, or the transformation of matter, by Christ provided the attainment of the supreme earthly achievement. But no one knew about the disintegration of the body into the atomic state. People thought that his body had been stolen away by his disciples. The slander of the old world is of no consequence. Each true achievement is needed for cosmos. The creativity of Podvig, achievement, feat, self-perfecting, self-denial, is the same in every process of creation. In augmenting the profundity of the form, we create an ageless crystal. The sense of perfection uplifts the spirit of creative manifestations. Christ, being a realist, desired that the phenomenon of transformation should be preceded by a Podvig in complete consciousness. One can point out two kinds of Podvig, the supermundane and the earthly. As an instance of supermundane striving, one can mark a serene passing. Let us not attempt to judge acts of Podvig, for the understanding of evolution is individual and voluntary. Anyone who is able to observe human auras may witness a vivid play of the emanations of light. Plans of rational action can be based on observation of this cosmic flux. Each sign of atrophy is connected with the products of darkness, but where there are waves of light, where the vital sparks interplay, there is our ray. My teaching can reveal the waves of the observed Akasha, the subtle, supersensuous spiritual essence which pervades all space. Welcome the joy of the sparks. This is not a diversion, but a deepening of the task. Only by manifesting our will can you approach. My wish is to preserve the beauty of spirit. Each motion can be transformed into an achievement of the spirit, commitment to the evolution of consciousness, and the onrushing whirlwind of events will lead to a new turn of the cosmic spiral. We will now continue with a selection of the advanced teaching and wisdom of Master Morya from the book Agni Yoga from 1929, as recorded by his disciples Helena and Nicholas Roerich. The excerpt gives a vision for an inner transformation toward being the courageous and daring ones at this very significant time in our history. Preface. When alone, spurning possessions, standing firm and unperturbed, not bewailing his fate, only then does the daring one exult. Thus shall we begin the translation of our ancient book of daring. When a child plays with a newborn kitten, his mother rejoices at his courage, loath to note that the kitten is still blind. When a youth toys with the soul of his comrade, the spectators marvel at his daring, not seeing the shackles binding the wretched soul. When a man denounces an assembly of judges, the witnesses admire his courage, not knowing that the daring of his threat has been bought with a jingle of gold. When an aged man comforts himself by deriding death, his friends delight, unmindful that fear has fashioned his mask of derision. True daring is often unnoticed by people because, in its essence, it is unusual, but the heart will tremble in response to the unusual. Where art thou who vanquished? Where art thou who transformed the tremor into a leap toward the light? Here, thou who darest, in the deep of night, I shall draw near to bless thy sandals. I shall strew thy pillow with sparks of light, for the sleep of the daring one is as the melting away of a lute when the 7 strings are bathed in mystery. The sleep of the daring one is as the calm before the whirlwind, when even the slenderest blades of grass are unstirred. Does the roar of the lion set the worlds a-tremble? No! Daring is awakened and the royal lotus of spirit unfolds. Brothers, let us gather in the hall of joy. The flower has unfolded, raised is the great wheel. Our joy descends to the netherworlds and rises to the brothers in the supermundane. We sing to daring our best song. The chirping of birds has disturbed the moment of rest. Why in the early hours are the birds so tense in their striving? They dare, overhearing the praise to daring, but no one informed them that their usual song would not increase their daring. The darkness shrieks, deafening in its banality. Darkness cannot withstand the daring of light. When the scales of the Lord have been prepared, we shall awaken early in order to weigh our use of the day just past. We shall select that which was most daring, in order that these kernels of good may weigh more in the balance. We shall add the sorrows of the old world, for their burden is of use to us, and add the derision of the ignorant. Each of these adds its weight to the cup holding truth. Should we find threats and assaults, let us not forget to add those to the cup also. Why the trembling of the scale? With what wretched murky tatters have we filled the cup of our wrongdoing? Like last winter's withered leaves are heaped the curses of the ordinary, the dross of yesterday. Victory to you, daring deeds, for the mighty winged deeds outweigh all wrongdoing. Lord, grant me to cast into the flames the deceptive rags of the ordinary. I shall not err in realizing that winged daring has thy blessing. In the sacred furnace will I forge the wings of Alea, daring, brave. I know nothing of complaints, cruelty, or aught that could weigh down my new wings. New will be my song. Broadly has spread the praise of daring. The least of the disciples have turned to the path of searching and have approached us, asking that we judge their striving. Each brought his dreams. I will destroy all earthly temples, because truth needs no walls. I will water all deserts. I will open all prisons. I will demolish all swords. I will blaze all trails. I will wipe away all tears. I will travel through all lands. I will inscribe the book of humanity. But the least one of them turned to the shining stars and said, "Hail to you, brothers!" And in this salutation of daring, his ego vanished. Let the path of the universe be acknowledged in this daring greeting. The book of Thomas à Kempis, The Imitation of Christ, has long been appreciated in the East, not only by virtue of its content, but because of the meaning of its title. In the midst of medieval idolatry of Christ, the voice of Thomas à Kempis resounded in protest. From behind the walls of a Catholic monastery rang out a voice to clarify the image of the great teacher. The very word imitation comprises a vital action. The formula, imitation of Christ, is an achievement of daring innate in the conscious spirit that accepts all responsibility of creation. Truly, the conscious pupil dares to approach the teacher in imitation. Such an example brought light into the musty darkness, and behind the monastic walls provided the impetus to strive toward creative daring. In accordance with the groveling medieval consciousness, it would have been fitting to say, the worship of Christ. But the ascendant spirit dared to pronounce a call to imitation. Each step of blessed daring must be cherished as a milestone in the progress of humanity. We do not give attention to monastic utterances. Thomas had no need to climb to the stake. His task was to proclaim not the forbidden, but the inspiring formula. There are two forms of truth. One must be nurtured by the flame of the stake. The other demands spreading without restraint. It is difficult to state which method is the more painful to pursue. Sometimes it is easier to suffer the pain of the stake than to witness the distortion of the disseminated teaching. In either event, Blessed be the daring that penetrates the darkness. The world has lost its happiness because happiness is in the spirit. Those who have turned away from the spirit must endure unhappiness, because why else would they return to the spirit? Therein lies the meaning of great events. Imperil, which attracts danger, is the poison resulting from irritability. This poison, a quite substantial one, is deposited against the walls of the nerve channels and then spreads through the entire organism. If modern science would try to examine objectively the nerve channels giving heed to the astral currents, it would encounter a strange decomposition of the astral substance during the passage of that substance through the nerve channels. This is a reaction to imperil. Only rest can help the nervous system to overcome the dangerous enemy that can call forth the most diverse irritations and painful contractions of the organism. He who is afflicted with imperil must repeat how beautiful everything is, and he will be right, because the flow of evolution follows immutable law. It is beautiful. The more refined the nervous system, the more painful is the deposit of imperil. This same poison, by the addition of one ingredient, may contribute to the decomposition of matter. Of no great merit are those who cannot distinguish the swallow from the vulture, but of what merit are those who believe that by plucking the eagle's wing they can turn it into a helpless duck? Beware of hypocrites, especially those immersed in greed, those cunning ones who stir their spiritual stew. The manifestation of the inviolability of the world's laws flashes like a sword. There is no spot for the hypocrite to lay his head. The teacher who has not assimilated the indications of the teaching is like a donkey under a too heavy load of grain. Great is the turmoil in the world. A blow against the teaching acts as a boomerang, smiting the inflictor. The air is alive with arrows. Dry away the sweat caused by the enemy's attack. At the time of assault, I shall speak of matters eternal. Let us rejoice because opportunities are multiplied. I know that in each hostile heart sprouts a useful seed. For more information and more of the Agni Yoga Society books, please visit agniyoga.org. Gallant viewers, we appreciate your company for today's words of wisdom. Coming up next is Mount Everest, the goddess, mother of the world, part 1 of 2, right after noteworthy news. Please stay tuned to Supreme Master Television for more uplifting programming. May you acquire precious insights in your inner contemplation while in God's gracious protection.
Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule and suprememastertv.com/WOW